Welcome to the Open Mic Podcast Show with Mike Midgley.
Hey, and welcome to the Open Mic Podcast. On today's episode, I'm excited to be covering a highly relevant topic of how to bounce back and develop a healthy emotional relationship with failure. Now, you may be thinking, well, what do you mean a healthy relationship with failure, Mike? Well, if you look at any entrepreneur anywhere, they've always been through that. And today's influencer is no exception. Our guest is Miha Matlievski, and I'm hoping I'm going to get that right. Mia's going to correct me on that later on. The founder of Fail Coach, and Miha is based out of Philadelphia, USA's business, although a Slovenian national, but joining us today from Serbia, Miha. So welcome to the show.
Well, hello, Mike, and it's a pleasure to be here on your show.
It's amazing to have you. I mean, I've had the pleasure for you guys listening today on the podcast. I've had the pleasure of learning more about Miha's backstory, and it is sensational, not in the spectacular way, but the end result and the detail. I think what we're going to learn today and how as entrepreneurs we deal and bounce back from failure is going to be immense. I think before we get started, it's rare that I come across what I would call successful people, truly successful people, where failure has not, and I repeat, has not played, a big part in their current success. I look back at my own 25 years in business, all the successes that I had out of the 90s into the 2000s. I lost a £12 million business at the time, with dollar conversion rate at the time, about $20 million business that we lost, and we had to put in administration at the height of the financial crisis. Speaking personally, the devastation that I felt, was beyond description, embarrassment, humiliation. So if you sat there now, either suffering from failure, you're in the middle of it, you're about to embark on a drastic event, it's okay. And this podcast is really going to help you understand. My situation is dwarfed by what Miha's going to share with you today. But that humiliation, that embarrassment, I didn't really look to blame others. I stuck my hand up tall and said, this is down to me. But signing the administration papers with Begby's trainer, the administrator who was appointed, used it as motivation to go again. And there's a great saying from one of my favorite philosophers, Jim Rohn, that, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. And I think that's something that I drew on at my time, to sort of get back and to recover, for what my time was an amazing disaster, spectacular. So welcome to the show, Miha. It's an absolute honor to understand and appreciate not only the backstory that you've gone through, but also the way that you dealt with it and the way you're helping people today. We're going to get into that next, but if you want to connect with Miha, check him out on LinkedIn. We'll put all the show notes and the links to Miha's profile in there. But in the interim, head over to fail.coach. And that is the website, www or https, fail, fail.coach. And you're going to learn a lot more about what the great work that Miha is doing in his business at the moment. So before we get kicked off, Miha helps sort of entrepreneurs and business executives by using, what we call monumental, and I think that's relative to what we're going to hear in a moment, personal failure and eventual redemption to help others get where they need to go to find their success and fulfillment. Miha, tell us and start us off with this backstory and share with the audience the highs, the lows, the darkest secrets that you shared with me pre-show and when we spoke last week ahead of this. Where did it all start for you? And just tell us a little bit about that. I think it started as an 18-year-old Slovenian high school dropout, and I mean that sincerely, not as a critique. Your words don't mind, but start us where it comes from, and then. Okay. And for you guys, we're in for a treat. Just listen to this story. Let's go, Miha.
I'll try to make it short, and then, you just jump in and ask any follow-ups. So I was quite entrepreneurial even when I was very much younger. Like, even when I was like 10, 11, I was, already buying something, selling something, in elementary school and then in high school. And then, in the third year of high school in Slovenia, that's when you are 17.
Yeah.
I dropped out of high school, and my father had a company, so I started working for my father's company. But I was more son by occupation, to be honest. So, he loved me really a lot, and I didn't really do so much. But I did enjoy connecting with people, networking. I enjoyed the sales process, the psychology. Those were subjects that were intriguing me, and I was learning a lot by myself and reading books on all those subjects. And then a few years later, when I was 23, my father really all of a sudden died from cancer. And because I was the only child, I had to take over, and I had no clue what am I doing, how to run a company. I was just doing a little bit of sales, and running a company, you have to manage finances, this and that, manage employees, and so on.
It's such a wider discipline, isn't it? It suddenly becomes not departmentalized, it becomes polarized, doesn't it? From finance through to governance and everything in between.
Yeah. So those were my first, steps into the entrepreneurial world, being an entrepreneur. And I started failing a little bit then, but then I was a bit lucky. I found some people who were willing to help me, but I didn't do my due diligence, and I started that relationship out of need. And usually what ends up is that after some time, when that need is fulfilled, you start seeing the differences. And then I didn't want to enlarge that company and bring new stuff into that, because I was full of ideas. So I started building new companies on my own on different ideas. And before I was 30, I had 4 companies and a few additional projects. And my all-around net worth was around 15 million US.
Wow.
And then it was in 2009, Monday, December 7th, when one of my companies was in real estate, developing this huge project. It was like 50, 60, maybe even 70 million US dollars.
Yep.
And it was, of course, financed by the bank and so on. And because of the crash, the financial crash, the prices dropped. So the selling prices dropped below my purchasing price. And so the bank naturally said, we are out of this. We want our money back. And all my other companies, everything that I owned was a collateral. And they just took that collateral. So on Tuesday, I was left with nothing. And the sad thing is the bank actually got all the money. And I was unable to pay paychecks to all my employees. I was unable to pay taxes. I was unable to pay suppliers in my other companies. So I ended up personally owing roughly 5 million US to what felt like half of the country. I mean, it is a small country, but yeah, it felt like, wherever I go, I'll meet somebody who I owe money to. And of course, that got me into huge depression, huge anxiety. I remember I was at home before, even that was taken away from me, lying on the couch, that baby fetus position, all crawled up.
Yeah.
And the worst thing was the nuclear reactions in my brain. It never stopped, thinking, rethinking, back to the past, not seeing any future, and so on. And so when I was at home, it was unbearable to be by myself because of all the thought process. But then when I went out, for occasional coffee with a friend, I was unable to have a conversation because I was constantly in my head. I was not present. And
so we're looking at this situation, Miha, that's 12 years of work, building the companies, learning along the way. You'd have amassed a personal net worth of in excess of $15 million one day, to then be more or less bankrupt to $5 million owing the next day.
Yes, and because of everything that happened, I was unable, due to the legislation, to do a personal bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So I was unable to do that. And I didn't just lost my businesses, my money, like I got divorced, I lost all my everything. All I was left was my mom, And, the worst, I think, was the feeling that, because one of the companies that went bankrupt was also my father's company. And I felt like, I let my father down. I think that was, out of everything that was happening to me, was the worst. The worst. And how to break it to my mom. I can handle a whole lot. And even if I can't handle, because I came very close to committing suicide, it was like you just jump out of the 5th floor, bam, it's over. Hopefully I'm not gonna make a mistake there, and I'll do that properly and not end up on a wheelchair. Well, that was going through my head when I was on the other side of the balcony. But it was really my father, like, letting down, like he started that company immediately after Yugoslavia broke apart. So, it was his child. Yeah. He was putting everything into that. And then my mom, because I know she's very fragile, how she will take it, how she will understand. So I was hiding all of that to shelter her. And by doing that, I made even more stupid mistakes. So, altogether.
You're paralyzed by fear as well, don't you? That feeling that you're paralyzed, you can't do anything. Yeah. And what you do seems to get further and further wrong. And I echo that. Back in 2012, I actually felt exactly the same. And although, and this is obviously serious stuff, guys, for you guys listening on the apps or the podcast, watching on the blog. If you are in such a dark place, please seek help. There is a better way. We're not professional counselors. We're not licensed to do that, of course. But if you are struggling, shoot me a message on #TheOpenMic. Contact me. He'll be more than happy. Whether even if you just start with something like the Samaritans or a trusted friend, go and speak to somebody. Please, if you're in that ultimate dark space, there is a way back. And whilst this is a pretty awful situation that Mia's currently explaining, and one that I've sort of witnessed and experienced myself, not quite to the extensive amount of deterioration of wealth and loss that Mia did, but it is a kick in the shins, especially when you work so hard. And if you look at some of the more famous people out there, Richard Branson failed, Peter Jones has failed, the Dragon's Den people, even Gary Vee fails on certain business models. He missed out on an Uber opportunity in 2010 and all sorts of things. So, that's maybe not quite an administration loss or a bankruptcy loss, but, we've even the more famous people, it's not just Mia and myself who are, not quite at maybe that level, of course, but, everybody fails at some point and learns. But if you are in that situation, there is a way back, and we're going to get into that in a moment or two. But if you are unsure, if you want to send me a private message in LinkedIn, send me a private message in LinkedIn. If you want to keep it privately, absolutely fine. We'll treat that with confidence. So I just wanted to get that in, Mia, because there might be people listening to the show who are actually at that point. And, I'm hoping that this story is going to bounce them back out of that and to get back to that successes that both you and I and lots of other people before us have actually followed. So, please carry on, Mia, on that. I really appreciate you just giving me the break to sort of share that with the audience, if that makes sense.
No. I mean, the one thing you mentioned that correctly, like the worst thing is when you're hiding all of that within you and it's eating you up alive, and that's the worst thing. For me, the whole transformation started happening later on when I finally started talking about it and when I let it out. That's super, super important.
And I think as well, Mia, it must have been heartbreaking because we were also in the finance business. You were in the real estate and the property business. We were a wheeled asset finance business. So roughly translated, we used to lease cars and vans and trucks and buses and things like that. If you ever leased a car, we were a provider of that. We used to be the money provider. And let's just be realistic, because I know I'll get questions on this. Mike, how does a guy go from, a $50 million business with a personal net worth of $15 million to losing 5 the next day? Literally, you've got to understand the times. For those of you who weren't trading through that period, and for those of you who were trading through that period in the finance or the asset business like property, you've got to understand that the world physically went bust. And I don't care what you say. Here in the UK, Barclays Bank, literally, Lloyds Bank, Willenbrock Bank, all these banks physically went bust. And if it weren't for government bailouts and money, then they would have gone bust. And, obviously it's like anything, the government couldn't let that happen, and they sort of propped things up. But down that food chain, Miha in the property business, us in the real asset finance business, we didn't have that government protection to save hundreds of thousands of jobs. And, even Miha's 20 million, 50 million, 50 million is small change compared to the banks going bust for billions. If you look at the quantitative easing in the UK, 3-4 billion pounds in banks just to keep the head above water. Otherwise, the economy would have literally, and then deflation, currency would collapse and things like that. So you've got to state this. This is not something that is Miha acting recklessly. Yeah, sure. I'm sure he'll look back and he'll share with us. And I'm going to ask you in a moment, Miha, about some of the stupid things that maybe you could have done better. Because I could raise my hand and probably give you a roll of like 100 things that I could have done better. But ultimately, when the world goes bust and you get exceptional circumstances that put immense pressure on you, it's sometimes impossible just to recover. It's just impossible. And ultimately, if anybody understands legal contracts, usually there's a clause, and pick one out if you've got one at home or you sat in your computer now. There's usually a clause in there that says force majeure. And the force majeure is like acts of God, acts of war, acts of things that just can't be foreseen. And whilst we all knew we were spending a bit too much and borrowing too much and maybe highly geared too much in the noughties. I mean, we were a highly geared venture capital company, venture capital backed company, and we were probably a little bit sailing close to the wind on that gearing ratio. But ultimately, the banks were lending, we were pushing hard, we were growing fast, as I'm sure Miha was here as well. And then they suddenly say, hey, that's not the case anymore. We have to go back into austerity. Then boom, wow, look what happened. It's just inevitable what happened. So date this, for you guys who were fortunate enough not to trade through it. It might be hard for you to comprehend and think, God, this guy must be a lunatic. Mike, you're rubbish. That's not the case. There is sometimes it's just out of the hands. But Mike, tell us a little bit more about that. Some of them.
I have to come back to one thing that, like the numbers. I'm aware that my numbers are insanely big for majority of people.
Yeah.
And they can't even understand how you can lose 20 million, like from one day to another and things like that. But I would like to point out one thing that we will go back to further along, which is through what I do. So I speak at conferences, I go do interviews, and then people reach out to me, people come to me, people open up, tell me their stories. And, I've met people who lost a fraction of what I lost money-wise. The emotions are all the same. The shame, the negative self-talk and all of that. So that's why, my tagline kind of is, that we want to establish healthy emotional relationship with failure, because it all boils down to emotions. And when we set a goal that carries big positive emotions, if we reach it, when we don't reach it, we go into the opposite direction. So it counters with high, big negative emotions. Yeah. And, that can happen with 10K, with 50K, with 100K. It doesn't have to be millions. The same emotions can be there, and people can, fall into same depression, anxiety. They can, start thinking about suicide and all of that as well. So it's really not about the numbers. Yes, they were huge numbers, but that doesn't mean that somebody who, only lost 10K suffers any less.
Yeah, it's great. There's another great saying. There's another great story, and for people who follow my stuff, I reference Jim Rohn a hell of a lot because he's like sort of my number one leader. And there's a story about the pastor in the church and Jesus and the disciples. Now, I'm not an expert on this, so I apologize if it's slightly off on the story. But people come in and made a deposit, and Jesus and the disciples are there. And this person comes in and maybe puts 3 pieces of gold in there. Some puts 2 pieces of silver in there. And this really old lady comes walking in. She puts 2 pennies in there. And the disciple says, 2 pennies? Wow, that's all. And, how can you say, Jesus, that she gave the most? He says, because out of that 2 pennies, it's actually probably 2/3 of what she actually had. The people who gave 3 pieces of gold, they may have had 20 or 100 pieces of gold. So that 3 pieces of gold is insignificant to their 100 pieces of gold, where this lady, she gave 2 pennies out of the 3. So that, even though she gave the less amount, she gave the most in sacrifice. And I think that's what we're saying. So I apologize for any students of the Bible who's can maybe correct me on that a little bit better. But, understand what Mia's saying here. But yeah, your numbers are not semi-irrelevant at the end of the day. But, if I know somebody who lost a business, an environmental business, they lost a marriage, the breakup of the kids, lost the marital home, and it takes some getting back. So, it doesn't matter if it's £1 million, 10 grand or whatever. And it's a great point, Mia. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you say that humiliation that I felt. I was speaking with a lady called Trish Leto a few weeks ago. And we were both talking about one thing that we had in common, and that's we both had a car repossessed off us drives. And even though I knew that my car was going to get repossessed, the company got into administration. The administrators let me keep it for a while, while I was helping them out. But then eventually, and that day, and they come, and it was the worst feeling in the life. And it's only a car; it's not even as close to some of the personal anguishes that I had, and you've had, and others have had. But when they drove that Merc off the drive and they repossessed it, I thought, my God, it's it was like a reality, a tangible loss.
No, I understand, because if I look back in time, at that time, material possessions were very valuable to me. And that's why now, after so many years, I'm so grateful to that experience.
Yeah.
I know why I needed it, because after that, I saw how meaningless my relationships were with people that were surrounding me. I was in all these clubs, like cigar club, Rotary club, this and that, fancy meals, 3 Michelin star restaurants, only the best of the best, black diamond cards and whatnot. And those were the first people who never answered my phone after they thought what happened to me. And I realized how empty my life was, because it was based on the wrong values, and I needed to really learn the lesson. And now I couldn't care less about a car or whatever. I mean, give me an hour or 2 walking with my dogs, and there's nothing that can prevent me from doing that. There's no money in this world that I would say, okay, I'll skip the walk with my dogs to earn whatever.
It's a great point. And, it's false. This successful people who have materialistic things, from super, super, super wealthy and, the billionaires all the way down. And it's nice, and you work hard. That's not an excuse, guys, that if you're working hard, you shouldn't reward yourself. Yeah, in moderation. But, it's materialistic things. And, if you are one of those individuals who needs materialistic to be popular, then, I would have a good, hard, long look in the mirror, because it's not real. That's not real enough.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I don't hate money. I don't hate material things. It's just, whether I really need something. Or why am I, or even, with the money, it's what you do with it.
Right. It gives you choice.
Yeah. So now, I support all sorts of humanitarian causes. Amazing. And even with my coaching, I do a lot of local work, completely free with the local community, helping them, to get out of the mindset where they are and so on. So it gives me the opportunity. So I'm not against the material stuff. So don't get me,
agreed.
Or the audience, don't get me wrong on that. It's just that my life it ended with the material stuff back then. There was nothing above that, no higher purpose behind it, no nothing, no why, no nothing above that. It was really just, to be surrounded with important people. Why? And what was I doing with that? Nothing.
Yeah, it's amazing. And no, it wasn't misunderstood, Mia, at all. I think, the things that you say that are absolutely spot on point. It's nice to treat yourself. It's nice to have materialistic things, but, it's not the real life, is it? The real life is what's inside. And, I know you do a lot of humanitarian. When we spoke before, you was out rescuing dogs and things like that. And it's amazing. For me, I chose a different path. I went back into schools with all my executive and knowledge. And there's a bank, obviously HSBC. Most people know that globally. They do a young enterprise scheme, and I went in and coached the sixth form and graduate kids in their HSBC Young Enterprise program. I went and volunteered at Doncaster Business Mentor. I'm a Doncaster 100 Business Mentor, where I help smaller businesses, just with those things. And that's totally free. I don't even get any expenses. It's totally time and cost benefit. But the value that I get out of that, the appreciation, you probably see me smiling now. I push a smile on my face when I do that, because I see the knowledge pass, the transfer pass. They can get some value that either they can't afford to pay with a coach or a non-exec or a mentor, whatever it would be, from a pay perspective. You give back to the community, and you can hold your head up high and walk through the streets and think, yeah, I feel good today. And a bit like podcasting, we're meeting great people and great entrepreneurs like Miha around the world. It's the best part of my working week when I interview people, because not only do I get to learn stories, I get to learn from these people, I get to teach, and then I can go and share that again. And it's so sort of satisfying, I suppose. It's hard to put up. How would you cover it, Mia? That is it just rewarding, satisfying, all that voluntary and that giving back? How do you best describe it?
I don't even know if there are words to describe it. I mean, honestly, when I see some of my students here locally who went from clueless, zero, in debt and so on, and now they're living this fulfilling life, they're giving jobs to others and so on. That's like, it's beyond words. It fills your heart. Like there's nothing that can exchange that feeling. And I love the idea that I'm now with the right values that I believe I have, I can influence people that they do things in the right moral way, valuable way, and kind of, multiplying those good core values through them into the world. It's hard to explain, but yeah, it's feeling like no other. Or, when you save animals and then, I adopted 4 of them myself, and for others, we find them families. I mean, the love that they give you and
unconditional, it's unconditional, isn't it?
Yeah. It's really unexplainable.
Yeah, it's amazing. And thanks for sharing that. So let me just bounce you back into that pre-collapse period. And I mentioned earlier about, I could probably think of 100 mistakes that I've made. Now, some of these mistakes that I've made, some that Mia's going to share, they may or may not be relative to you. There's no references, but I just want to sort of highlight a couple of points. So, we were very highly geared, Mia, as a venture capital company, before the financial crash. We maybe grew too fast. We overtraded, and we were reliant on that income level coming in at the same level to sort of maintain, because it's so easy to scale up, but it's a lot harder to scale back down. Assume that you're not bankrupting it out, and trying to save your business. You still got contracts and property and mortgages and things like that need paying, even after the people or the cars have been repossessed or made redundant. But we probably overtraded too much, and we were too highly geared. So of course, when the financial situation moved, it was an exceptionally vulnerable business, if that makes sense. And that's just one to get started. I'd just love for you to share some of the crazy mistakes or silly mistakes that maybe you've made, that you maybe look back and think, silly me, what's going on?
I probably made, it feels like I made every mistake possible. It just feels like that, because there are just so many mistakes. And that was also part of the turning back position when I was on that balcony. But I'll get back to that later. So it was like, I don't know, picking the wrong partners, not value-based, but because it was a current need. But then once it was satisfied, things went wrong. it was, like not doing proper cash flow management, not having, a legal team besides me, because, like I'm so great. I can take a look at the agreement and, I can decide whether it's a good one or not. And, one of the things why everything happened the way it did was because I didn't have a look at the agreements in the right way through some qualified lawyers. And, I was always employing people skills over values, and, it should be values over skills. And like literally, I think I've did everything wrong, but you can do wrong in business when it comes to starting it. So no homework, no business plan. You just get an idea, you go out, you wing it. I mean, every now and then somebody wins the lottery as well. But, the odds are very, very small. And, I was playing with very small odds instead of doing things the other way around so that the numbers would be in my favor, which I do now. So, no plan, no action plan. I was doing things that I had no clue about. I was looking at, consultants and coaches and all of that, not as an investment, but as, a cost, and so on. So, I mean, I could go on and on and on. Probably we can do this podcast for a few days, and I would probably not list all the failures that I went through.
They're good ones, they're good ones. I just want to summarize this, and I see this a lot, Miha, when I work on as an NXD and in some of the boardrooms that I work with clients. And the best way I learned to describe what you've just put there, because they're just classic mistakes, not having a plan, going out there and winging it and doing whatever. And, not referencing any horrible disasters of the Twin Towers and 9/11. Look, we all understand the tragedy there. But if you think of a tower, there's a reason why a tower falls down when it's compromised. First is a pyramid. And I want you to think about a tower, and I want you to think about a pyramid. And this is the way I look at it. If you go out there in business and just wing it and, and make some of the mistakes that Miha's kindly owned up to, and ashamedly, I've got to own up to all of those as well at some point in my career, then ultimately you're building and building and building and building, but the base is not big enough. So any sort of impact, whether it's financial, whether it's economy, whether it's competitive, market trends based, it's gonna take a wobble and ultimately it could fall down. And there's a reason that the pyramids have stood for thousands of years, and that's because the base is wider than the height. So if you think about it in business, what I do here, I work what's called the 7 fundamentals from finance, ops, people, marketing, sales, governance, and personal development. And there, you can divide and rename those and, think about whatever way that you want. But if you take those 7 and you put that baseline in and you concrete those in your finance, such as getting a forecast and cash flow management and the correct rate of borrowing rate, and in your operations, your fulfillment, your manufacturing, your delivery, whatever you sell, you deliver, in your people, Miha mentioned something immense that I don't want to skip over. I'll translate it into my language: recruit for character, train for skills, not the other way around. Sure, some jobs are going to need some skills, like if you're hiring a finance director, they're going to need to be competent in money, of course, but culture, and then look at the skills if need be. You can always train or whatever. And then, you've got to marketing, make sure you've got your lead generation system in, your sales, and, your processes in there. And then your governance, making sure it's legal, and then obviously wrap that around with personal development and get good at it. The baseline of your business, get those welded in, get those dialed in, and then you can build up, and then you can scale, and it's amazing.
No. The foundation needs to be there. I mean, the way I explain it now is you can't start building a house at the first floor. You need to start with the foundation, and you need to make solid foundation, and then you can go as high as you want. But if the foundation is not there, then the house at one point will fall apart like a house of cards. It can fall apart when you're in the 5 figures or 6 or 7. I've seen it fall apart in 8 figures as well. It can happen at any time, but if the foundation is not there and you're not constantly going back and reaffirming that foundation as you grow and making it stronger and stronger and stronger, I mean, it just falls apart. So that's like I do. My program is based on I call it the 5 pillars, but 5, 7.
It's different takes.
Yeah, we have different vocabularies that we use, but yeah, it's based around the same things.
Yeah, it's amazing. So tell us, before we get into the questions, we've had all this trouble. We've had this misfortune, bad malpractices, call it whatever you want. We've mentioned it a couple of times, and I'm sure the audience are keen to hear about this. You stood at the other side of the balcony.
Yeah, so the aha moment.
Let's just talk about the few hours leading up to that. I think that's important to get out. And then let's talk about that particular moment.
Yeah, sure. So it wasn't just a few hours leading up to that moment. It was actually quite a few weeks, maybe even a few months, where that idea was creeping more and more into my mind. And, I remember often when I was driving, not on a highway, but on local street, and you saw like a truck coming from the other side, should I just turn the wheel and it's over in a second? So that idea was, I was almost romanticizing the idea, because in my mind it was, you do it for a second or two, it will probably hurt, but then you have the silence. I so wanted that silence. I couldn't silence my mind, because it was, like I said, it was like nuclear reaction going in there of, past, future, darkness, no future, like whys, and then you start asking yourself, what did I do? And then you don't go into the rational stuff, like, what steps I did not do, but it's like, oh, why God? Why, I'm not a bad person. Why this has to happen to me? And then I started blaming everything else for my situation and so on. So it was like a cluster of all those emotions, thoughts, and my brain was just on the verge of exploding all the time. And so that idea of, I will silence it by doing that, everything will go quiet, there will be just nothing, was so appealing that, at one point it was like 10, 11 p.m. and it was like 2 days before they will take my apartment away, and I was just there. I was smoking on the balcony, and I just suddenly found myself on the other side. It was like kind of, I wasn't even there, like kind of that strange moment. But then for the first time, I said this out loud, and I'm not going to say it exactly, because, but it was, you failed.
Yeah.
But in the next instance, I heard myself say the word you, and immediately, like everything rushed through my head, like, okay, I made that mistake. I said that contract is good. I did this. I chose that partner. Me. And I finally took ownership of everything bad that happened to me. And my next thought, and that was the aha moment, was, oh my God, if I now learn and do better, make better decisions, surround myself with better people, if I did it once, I can do it again. And that was so liberating, like that thought, like, yes, I can do it even better, even bigger. I can take care of all of this. And that was what got me going. And
that's amazing.
I stayed up all night, and I really just created an action plan. I wrote down all my minuses, what I need to work on, what I need to learn, what I need to change. The first thing in the morning was I started calling all my debtors, because every day I had calls from debtors. That was adding to the whole nuclear reaction. Yeah. And they were not nice calls. They didn't say, oh, we're going to sue you. It was much harder, almost mafia style things. Yeah. And I just said to everybody, I said, you know what? I don't care. If you want to kill me, like, just come here. This is my address. Come here and let's get it over with. I don't care. I mean, it's not like I owe $5,000 and I can get a job and, I can repay you all like in a month. I mean, I owe, $5 million altogether, and I need to create something huge to repay that. Yeah. So either you help me or open some doors or whatever, or at least leave me alone, because with you calling me every morning, I can't do anything because my mind doesn't function.
Yeah.
And
paralysis again, isn't it? Where it just fear, people are just stalled by fear.
Yeah. And then I made a deal. I will call you guys once a month. I'll give you a report, but throughout the month, you never call me again. You leave me alone. I have to do my own work. And then, of course, nothing happens overnight. So I went on this huge journey of, self-development, business development, learning, exploring, working on other things, and so on. Having, not jobs, but gigs here and there. I was still, very good at sales and things like that. But, it was easy for me then to earn a few thousand euros or US dollars, but all went into paying off debt because the debt was so huge. And I remember, how I had like $5 in my wallet, and that was all I had for the whole week. And I was just eating, 3, 4, 5 pounds of potatoes throughout the whole week. I was just cooking those potatoes, or I would cook rice with nothing and just eat that rice. It was like a very hard time, but I, again, appreciate it so much. I learned to be humble, and I lost that,
you lose it when, you'd move.
I was flying high.
You'd become somebody else.
Yeah, well, I was 20 something. I had all those millions. I had like a BMW M5 and this and that, and, the Michelin star restaurant. It's easy to get lost. It's easy to just fly high. And so I had to relearn how to be humble. Yeah. And I did. And I needed that long lesson, because if I would just lost, a little bit and I would solve that in 3 months, I wouldn't learn the lesson.
Yeah. So
because I was very
hit the ground hard. You hit the ground hard on that lesson. Yeah. I think what I just want to take you back to is that, that point, I'm sorry to do this again, but on the balcony where
No.
And it's that self-acceptance that, I recall with my own situation that, the world's gone bust. The world's gone bust. This has happened. That's happened. The other's happened. Sorry, just 1 second. And, all these things that happened, to me, I'm sat there thinking to myself, like, whose fault is this? Why has this happened to me? And, you do look for other sort of, call it what you want, reasons or whatever it would be. But ultimately, you've just got to look yourself square in the mirror, and you've got to look straight down the barrel, and you've got to say, you are responsible for this. You made the decisions. And when I say you, I'm looking at myself and talking about that in the mirror.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if you can relate to this, Mia, but I remember at the top of our landing in our farmhouse, we've got like this sort of old-fashioned mirror. And it's not an antique. It has no material value, but it's an old sort of thing with it's a little bit quirky. It was a family present type of thing. And, it has sentimental value. But because of the style of it, with it being like an old sort of style and things like that, I'm looking at that there, and I'm speaking about, you've failed, you've done this, you've done that, you've done the other. And ultimately then, I'm sort of, it's as if, not an out-of-body experience, but it's as if I'd left. When I was sort of dressing myself down, it's as if I'd totally and utterly left. There was just, as if I were looking at myself in the mirror, having this debate, and like the real person dressing the mirror image down and saying, I've had enough with you, and either sort yourself out or I'm not going to be part of this anymore. And then it wasn't as much as then I re-entered my own body. This is not spiritual or out-of-body experience or anything like that, but it's just how I remember it. It probably wasn't anything like that, but I was sitting in front of that mirror, dressing myself down, and as if I I don't know if you've ever seen the film Doctor Strange, when he sort of comes out of his own body and he's watching himself and look and speak to this world. He's like, what's happening? And that's how it felt to a degree. And it was the weirdest thing. And then it's like, right, I'm going to go out there and sort it. And, whilst I didn't quite do what you did with this checklist and the minuses and the plus, I sort of got straight back to it with it and said, right, what do I need to do? And I just focused down on what are my strengths, what resources are available to me, what favors can I call in? You know, and there were quite a few favors I could call in, but I tell you what, there were very, very, very few people who wrote the check me, like you. They all scattered and disappeared, and I could count on one hand the amount of people who come and said, Mike, don't worry about it, we'll get you sorted. And that was the biggest learning lesson for me, that not the self-failure, although that was one hell of a sucker punch, you know, a Mike Tyson knockout punch. It was the fact then I went through what I thought was a strong black book and said, look, I might need some help. You know, could we get a meeting together? Oh, yeah, well, I'm busy and I've got my own troubles. And it's like, wow. And then, you know, you think, well, that's just one bad person. Then when you get 15 of them calls in a day, and that wasn't me begging Mia, it was just maybe making a call saying, look, I know where I'm at. I wonder if you've got some time for me. I'd like to come out. I've got a couple of ideas that I might want to share with. I might need you to introduce me to someone or help me. And they disintegrated like dust. And that's the biggest lesson for me. I absolutely, you know, without any shadow of a doubt, hate those people. And one of them, and I don't even mind calling them out, Mia, a guy called Stuart Vitti at St. James's Place, you know, the Rothschilds investment people we'd made lots. We were his first customer back in 1999, making there. And we did all that. And we rang Stu. Stu didn't want to know because I weren't investing money with him anymore. And, you know, Stu, if you're listening to this, you know, I don't care. I'm not trying to ruin your business. I'm just saying that that was a very, very, very personal situation. Stu came to mine and my wife's wedding, right? He set up the funds for my kids. He was, you know, helped us with mortgages in the earlier days, did his investments. And when there was no money more left to invest, not only did he walk away, he didn't have the courtesy to call me, just sent me a letter passing me off to one of his juniors. And that hurt. But you know, Mike, that's the type of people that you have to deal with.
But Mike, I mean, yes, I understand where you're coming from, and all of that happened to me as well.
Yeah.
But, you know, when I look at it now, I'm thankful that they did that to me, you know, because if they would give me a check, that would only prolong the wrong Miha with wrong values, with wrong mindset. And on the long run, they would do me a bad favor. So now I'm actually very grateful to all the people who turned their back on me. And yes, at one moment, I wasn't just alone. I felt completely lonely in the whole world, you know, like I'm the only one who this is happening to. Nobody is understanding me. Everybody who I, you know, counted as a friend left me, you know, all of that. But there was something cathartic about it because, you know, I really had to change within.
I was the catalyst.
Yeah. And so looking at that moment, I was thinking the same as you are. Like, I was like, you know, I was always there for you guys. Anytime anybody needed help, I was there. You know, everything would, you know, like I was always somebody they could count on. And suddenly I couldn't count on anybody. But that was okay because I had to go through that. I had to really go to the rock bottom because that was the only way. Because, you know, like I was living in this cocoon of happy life and everything is wonderful and I can't do no wrong for so many years. And I really needed a hard lesson to realize that that's not the right way to go forward.
No, it's a great point. And but I'm sure, let me ask you a question. Did you feel bitter about it to start with before you went through that phase? You know,
of course.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's the main thing, isn't it? You have to burn that out, and then you
need to have the closure in yourself. And you know, when you know that you've done the closure, when you can speak about those moments or you can speak about those people, and you know, not showing it to the outside world, but you sense that no negative energy starts within you, you know, because if now I mention the name of that person, you know, you might go all jumpy and
it doesn't matter anymore.
Like that energy will come, or the resentment or the negativity. But once you can talk about it with, you know, like complete clarity and, you know, like, okay, they did what they did. I mean, they did it, you know, however they decided is the best, but you can be calm about it. That's when you know that you had the closure. And the closure
absolutely.
doesn't have to be with that person. You don't have to talk with them or anything. You need to have the closure in yourself, in your head, in your heart.
Accept it. Yeah, and the emotion of that sort of statement there comes out because I'm trying to relive it as how I felt at the time. But you're absolutely right. Now I look back and I think, do you know what? I can hold my head up high. If we passed each other in the street, it wouldn't be me looking down or looking away. I would look straight ahead because I did everything right there. It wasn't me that I've moved on. It's not a problem. And to a degree. It's not just Stu I say that to, but it's a lot of the others as well, Mia. But I actually feel fairly sorry for those type of people who have to act like that, and I'm sort of humble about it, and I can just sort of move forward. And it's interesting to dip back into it because sometimes do you feel that raw emotion or do you not? And it's an interesting point.
Mike, it's very simple.
Yeah.
I don't surround myself anymore with people like that. Very simple.
Yeah.
I go with values first.
Absolutely.
And so I do my due diligence with each and every person, and if they're aligned. And so the first thing is I speak my truth, I'm very authentic. I don't lie about things, about the past. I tell it as it was, with all the good things and the bad things, and I'm very upfront with what are my core values, what are my priorities, how I see life, and so on. And so whoever aligns with that, we can
work or be associates or friends. Absolutely.
But with like people who I was hanging out before, they were not aligned with who I am as a person. I was trying to align myself with them, and I lost myself in that. I lost who I truly am because I wasn't that person. I became that person because, I don't know, I thought I have to be, with the up movers and the shakers and so on. But now I don't mingle with those people anymore.
The great tip that is prevention is better than cure, or due diligence is better than the letdown that they give to you, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's not bad. There's almost 8 billion people on this world. We don't have time to meet everybody. So the sooner we see that we are not aligned, the better. We can stop wasting each other's time, and we can go on and meet more people who we enjoy spending time with, who we align with, and that's it.
That's it. There's a great quote here. I don't know if you heard it from The Richest Man in Babylon, the George S. Clason book, and that is the moneylender. I think it's called Ar-Kod, the moneylender in the biblical, the 2,000-3,000 BC sort of times when the book's set in. And because he's the moneylender, and of course there's no sort of credit checks, so you got to, in year 2000 BC and such. He used to have his money chest, and when he opened up the money chest, there was an inscription on the underside of the chest that the book sort of states. And that was his reminder before he used to lend money to people. Yeah. And the statement went something along the lines of, and again, apologies to the purist of that book if I get slightly wrong, but the statement went, better err a little caution than a great deal of regret. And I suppose that's what it's about. It's about you're doing your checks first. And like I say, I love the point there, what you're saying about, let's do we have the same values? Do we have the same?
I've learned to do things without expecting anything in return. It's a very hard thing to learn or to practice it. It doesn't come easy, but when I say to somebody, I'll help you, that doesn't come with, and then, you'll do something for me.
Absolutely.
If I help them, like even I lend them money or, I help them in their business or, whatever I do, I don't expect anything in return. And it's so much easier to go through that. I did my part. I believe in karma, that, what goes around comes around, and it doesn't have to be from the same person, but, just living without expecting anything in return is an amazing achievement, because so many times that's where the disappointment comes. And when you don't expect anything in return, you can't really be disappointed. So, I do a check on my end. Is that something that I want to do? And if it's yes, then I'm going to do it. And if it's no, I'm not going to do it. If I can't decide in the moment, I'll say, you know what, I need to, check in my calendar and see, and I'll get back to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
But, like an example would be, so I'm a business coach. I have my clients, but I also do a lot of, like I said, work here locally with local entrepreneurs. They get all the same treatment. It doesn't matter whether, I took you on as a client. For me, that's sacred. If I decided not to charge you for that, that's my decision, and I did it. And, I'm not going to go over my word. I will deliver everything that I promised.
Yep.
And in the same way as you are like my highest paying client, I will not treat it in any other way, because I do think very carefully before I say yes. But when I do say yes, I go all in. I do it without any expectation. When I do extra work for my client, I don't expect that they will compensate me for that if I haven't mentioned that before. If I just go in and do it, it was my decision. I decided that I need to step in or something like that, but I'm not expecting something. When I know that I will want to charge, I say it up front, but that's a different thing. But otherwise, I just do everything without any expectations.
Yeah, it's a great way. And you know what? I have a great saying as well, Miha, which is I can put my head on the pillow at night and I can sleep at night, because, it's that peace of mind which is priceless when you work that way. It really, really is. And if you want to learn more about what Miha's doing, you can just head over to fail.coach. So again, fail.coach. If you listen to this in the car or on the app, we will put the links in the show notes, so you can link straight through there. You can also find out and search more about Miha online. And if you just search the hashtags as well, framework for freedom, and that's number 4, framework for freedom, and hashtag fail.coach, you'll pick up some of Miha's content there on the usual channels such as YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, etc., etc.
Maybe I can just add something.
Yeah.
So in my programs, people value the most when we do brainstorming sessions together. And so a few weeks ago, we decided with my marketing help that, because I do love that the most, I love interacting with people, I love helping people with whatever they're dealing with. So if they go into my chatbot on my Facebook page, so Messenger chatbot, they will get notified when I open my Zoom client for 2 or 3 hours, and I do that once or twice every week, and then they could just jump on and we can have a conversation about whatever they're struggling with. And people have such amazing aha moments, and they love it. And I honestly, I just told my marketing guy the other day, I said, if I could, I would probably just have Zoom open 24/7, and I would just have people from all over the world jump in, and we would just be brainstorming on how to solve problems, how to overcome struggles. And that's really something that I love absolutely above anything else that I do, is helping people. And so, if they want, they can just sign up. All they have to do is just click on the button and say, yes, notify me. And then they will get notifications whenever I open the Zoom client, and they can just jump in. And I always try to mix up a little bit different time zones so that, the Australians can join, the Europeans, the Americans. So I mix it up all the time.
Oh, that's amazing. So you can head over to facebook.com/failcoach. And from that point, you can sort of sign up for using the Facebook Messenger on the bot. Highly recommend you to do that. And that's an amazing offer. Thank you, Miha. I really appreciate that. So as we move into the questions part of this.
Absolutely.
Talk to you. We've talked about the emotion, that emotional connection, and, that EQ and mindfulness playing dealing with failure. Like you, I'm a very value-driven and very straight-talking. I'm here to serve. I don't really expect anything in return. I'm a big believer in altruism that way as well. If people, I suppose what I'm trying to get to is a lot of people are talking the theoretical side of it, but we're going to dig a little bit deeper into hows now. So when you talk about the role of EQ and mindfulness play in and dealing with failure, What's the starting point in your eyes? Is it that admitting what we talked about earlier, or is it a bit deeper than that?
No, it's a little bit more than that. But I mean, EQ and mindfulness are both huge topics on their own. And I mean, I always invite everybody to study them as much as possible, because the more you study them, the more you practice them, the more opens up to you. So that's absolutely, two things that I would invite anybody to do. But, there are like a minimum viable product, like the minimum of both, that I like to teach my clients. And then, of course, if they want to dig deeper, that's okay. That's very welcoming. But at least to learn the basics. And so when it comes to emotional intelligence, it's really about, certain situations require us to either use the logical or the emotional part. Yeah. And understanding when you need what is really, really important, because majority uses emotions when the logic would be in order, and logic when emotions would be in order. So this is one thing, and that's how it goes hand in hand with mindfulness. So I'm not talking about mindful meditation. I mean, that's an amazing thing. I'm more talking about intentional presence, being in the driver's seat throughout the day. And the easiest way my clients, including myself, are learning that is you just go in your phone, and for every 30 minutes, you create be mindful reminder. So, if you normally wake up at 7, you start at 7, and then every half an hour until you normally go to bed. And then you set that reminder to repeat daily. And after just a few days, because every 30 minutes, it resets you. And you can ask yourself, have I been mindful? Have I been in the driver's seat for the past 30 minutes? Oh, maybe I haven't been. Okay, how can I be in the driver's seat next 30 minutes? And it really just creates this intentional thinking. And the other thing that happens is you are present in the moment. Yeah. And when you're present in the moment, you can start recognizing things. You don't react on autopilot. So when something happens, you can say, oops, let's take a step back. Let's have a deep breath in, breath out. So has this happened to me before? Oh, how did I react back then? What was the result? Maybe it's time for me to try something new. So kind of the EQ and the mindfulness go really hand in hand.
That's amazing.
It creates that intentional driver's seat position for yourself throughout the day. And it kind of gives you that space. Imagine like your life is going on the TV and you're sitting on the couch. And you can, from, a few feet away, you can actually, see, that's not the best way to react. Or maybe I need a bit more time. Maybe I shouldn't say yes immediately. Or maybe I shouldn't say no immediately. Like, how can I say it in a way so that I can give them the response tomorrow when the emotion of the moment wears off a little bit? Yeah. So it kind of mindfulness and emotional intelligence goes super hand in hand. And that's one of the foundational parts that I think is super important for any CEO, entrepreneur, business owner, like anybody, because you need to know how to balance emotions and logic.
You know what? That's great. And I love the idea of the 30-minute check-in. And, it's because, you say there, sometimes we do act in the heat of the moment. We do make, irrational decisions, the emotion, sometimes, there's the old saying, isn't it? Well, let me sleep on it and take a look tomorrow or something, and, I like also what you use about that strategy. So, let me check my diary. Would it be okay if I come back tomorrow on that? And, that's a great way, because most people don't demand a decision right now. It's like, okay, this guy's busy, he's a professional, he needs to check his schedule. And then that allows you to sort of disconnect, process, and move forward. So that's awesome advice. Thanks ever so much, Miha, on that. That's great. So, how to overcome the fear of failure. You talk about it, the fear of failure is the number one dream killer for entrepreneurs. I have to agree. I talked about it earlier about being paralyzed with fear, so it stops me being active. And you mentioned about the calls that were coming in. that stopped you being productive to recover and then eventually pay them, and which you did. So how do entrepreneurs overcome that fear of failure? What should be done?
I mean, the easiest way, so if they are dealing with past failure and because of that they have fear of failure for the future, what we normally do is we go back to those past events and we play out different scenarios of what they could have done differently. Because the thing is, we are so focused on the outcome, but it's really the process that we should be focused on, because any outcome is a result of multiple steps, which is called a process. And so, if you want so you set a goal and then you let it go and you focus on the process and you keep, so what I teach my students is permanent beta when it comes to processes. So we always go back to them. We always polish them, make them more effective. We use measurements, we use KPIs, we use benchmarking to see where we are. And then when you focus on the process, you take away, that focus on the end goal, because the end goal, any goal can be achieved if the right process is set in place. So, the first thing is we try to establish whether their action steps were aligned with the goal that they have set. And trust me, 100% of the times it wasn't. And once they see that on a logical level, that it was actually the wrong steps, they see why they didn't achieve the goal. And that kind of makes it so much easier. And then they start understanding, so if I want to achieve another goal, I need a rock solid plan. So I can make it myself. Do I have the knowledge? Or I can find somebody who can help me create that plan, somebody who has the knowledge, or I have to be aware that there will be a lot of trial and error, but then I need to add that into the timeline.
That's brilliant, because it's going to elongate out. That's amazing. So that's past failures as well. But talk to me about if you sat here right now thinking about a pending failure or something like that. How do you coach, or how do you advise people or guide people around that sort of subject?
It's very in the similar way. We break it down step by step. We find case studies online on achieving that goal, whatever it is. If you want to lose weight, you have to eat a bit differently. You have to exercise a little bit, or you won't achieve that. I mean, if you just eat one salad per week and all the rest you eat burgers and French fries and pizzas, well, it will be a bit hard to lose the weight. So we really go, this is the logical part. We use the logical part to rationalize what needs to be done to achieve a particular goal. Do they have the resources? Do they have the leverages? What kind of leverages? So we really do a little bit of business development plan. And when I say business development, it doesn't have to be related to business. We just go through the same steps, and can be about anything. And then, how much is really dependent on you. So let's say if you want a successful marriage, you need to find the other person. I mean, there's only so much that you can do, your half, but you can't influence the other half. So you have to realize that, the odds are a little bit lower. So the more it is in your grasp, the easier it is to see how you can achieve the goal. The less it is, you have to count that in. And it's a 50-50 chance when two people are involved. And so, working with those odds and all of that, really rationalizing the whole thing and just making a plan. And so, one thing always comes to my mind. I don't know how much you were a fan of Friends, the TV show.
I've got to be honest with you, that's not me. I'm a bit more of a X-Files and Columbo geek. But.
So, but do you remember Chandler and Ross?
I do, I do.
Okay. And at one point, Chandler was marrying Monica. And I think one day before the marriage, he ran away, and then Ross finds him. And, everything was just so overwhelming to Chandler. And the kid, he was always envisioning, fears of the future, the kids, the this, the that. Oh, we are the Bings. And then Ross really calmed him down and said, well, let's make it step by step. Like, let's just go home and you take a shower. Can you manage that? Yeah, that's easy. And then when he did that, now let's just put on a tie. Can we do that? And he was like really breaking it down into simple steps and just going one step at a time. Because so often we think so much in the future. And I mean, the world is so much changing. I mean, if you created a business plan that involved highly Instagram and Facebook a year ago, now you can just throw it away. With all the changes to the algorithm in just 1 year, the things from a year ago are not working anymore, or at least not performing the way they should be. So, you know,
it's right. I mean, I was speaking to Dan Tyre, you know, the employee number 6 at HubSpot, the director who's helped them grow to sort of 500 million. And Dan talks about the same example that you just shared about the marketing and the social side there, Miha, but in sales. And he's saying, you know, if you were doing this in the old days, oh, by the way, that's 2017. And he's talking about the old way of doing it in 2017, then I'm not going to buy off you today, and I'll never buy off you today. You know, the way that we do things in 2019, it's such a fast-moving landscape. It's almost impossible to keep up. So you've got to be on point to sort of, you know, plug yourself into those information curves. Yeah.
One of my core values is always learning, always growing. And this is a mindset that I try to give all my clients. Yeah. And it's all about permanent beta. So everything that we do is permanent beta. And then I have different systems like weekly power hour that, or you know, for CEOs, I have this technique I call it 4 hour a week CEO, where really if you lay down the right foundation, all you need is roughly 4 hours a week for the CEO part. Yeah. But that's more for CEOs with at least, let's say, 30, 40 employees, when you already have like a little bit of leadership, C-level.
Middle management in there.
Yeah. But then you can do it in 3, 4, 5 hours a week. And we have this routine that we just go through every week. And once they fell into that routine, it's super easy. And then once a month, you have like a big firehouse time. Maybe I can share this simple story. It's about firemen. So the firemen, normally what they do is they spend time in the firehouse where they, you know, train, learn, get to know new equipment and so on. And then they go to the fire ground when necessary. And the more time they spend in the firehouse, the quicker, better, healthier they are on the fire ground. But, you know, what do we do in our lives? Most of the time we are on the fire ground, solving things, attacking to-dos, instead of being in the firehouse. And, you know, when you're a solopreneur, yes, of course, you need to be a lot on the fire ground. But the moment you become a business owner, you have a few people working for you, you need to be more and more in the firehouse. That's where the magic happens, not on the fire ground. So, you know, how to take themselves out of in the business and be on top of the business, and then having this firehouse time.
Amazing. No, amazing. Thank you for that. We touched on it earlier, Miha, about the 5 pillars for creating a successful, sustainable business when starting out. I'd love for you to break those down in your view of it. Just to sort of cover, you know, everybody's got a different way of looking at things. There's no right or wrong, but these, you know, whether it's 5, 3, 7, 9, it doesn't really make a difference. I think for me, the reality is getting the right system and the right process that you can work with. And, you know, I think it'd be super, super valuable for the audience and the listeners today if you could just sort of break down in your vision and understanding what these 5 are and what are the maybe main ways to apply them. You know, so what they are, identify them, and then the execution part.
It's super simple. So the first pillar is you, the entrepreneur.
Yes.
So, you know, like, you can't really do much if you don't work on yourself, because being an entrepreneur means that you want to do things that you haven't done yet before. So you need to get yourself out of the comfort zone. And by doing that, you will have to overcome, you know, certain mindset, certain limiting beliefs. For somebody, maybe it's they don't like to talk to people. And of course, you have to get to know your target audience. You need to speak to them. For somebody else, maybe they're very creative genius, but they don't like the paperwork. And, sometimes you have to do that part as well. Yep. So it's always about, learning something new, overcoming something. So you, the entrepreneur, the personal development, EQ, mindfulness, all of those things are an essential pillar for a successful entrepreneur. Right. And then the second pillar is doing your homework. So instead of just going out there and winging it, we go through a few steps of business development, and we establish product market fit. We prepare all the operational stuff that will follow. And then the third pillar is really simple. Let's validate that. Let's validate so that we have certain proven processes. Yeah. And normally, I suggest to everyone to do the validation organically. And then the fourth pillar is growth or scaling. So when you already have a framework prepared, validated, then you can grow and you can scale. And then the last pillar, the fifth pillar, is entrepreneurship can be a very, very lonely job. And, we are surrounded with non-entrepreneurs. I mean, if you're lucky enough to live in, like Berlin, Lisbon, London, where you have this vibrant entrepreneurship community and 10 meetups every day, that's a different story. But in most cases, we are surrounded with people who, are 9-to-5ers, who still go with that, go to school, have good grades, find a job, be there until retirement, and so on. So it's very hard to prosper when you don't have that supportive system or surrounding you. So the fifth pillar is actually the community that I'm creating, or that we are creating, where people can network, where we have mastermind calls and all of those things, so that they can connect, they can be surrounded, they can support each other, and just have that support that they need, the somebody that's by their side each step of the way. So those are my 5 pillars.
That's amazing. One thing, I love the entrepreneur. It starts with you. Work on yourself, the EQ, the personal development. Do the homework. Make sure you mentioned something there that it's so obvious, but a lot of people just either skip it, don't put enough time into it, and that's product market fit. Too many people build products that they want to build instead of understanding what the market wants to buy. And that's such an amazing one. One thing I'd like you to drill down a little bit harder for me, if you could, is that validate point of view. And I know you mentioned you do that organically. Could I ask you just to expand without giving too much away, because I understand that these are paid coaching programs.
Oh, no, that's okay.
But no, I understand that. But obviously, I'm respectful of that. So could I just ask you to open up? Because I think most of the listeners, if not all, would say, yeah, I've got to sort myself out and I've got to commit and do the work in the study. I think they do the homework from, the product market fit, the operational processes, make sure we can deliver what the hell that we're selling. I get all that. But, validate. What are the steps in that? Could you expand on that of, maybe 3 that we should do?
Sure. I mean, the product market fit, one of the basic things in the product market fit is deep understanding of your audience. And of course, you can do that online. There are many tools. You can research the keywords and data and numbers. But, the best way to do it is to talk with people who kind of fit that ideal target market avatar.
Yeah, get them on the phone, meet them face to face, whatever it would be. Yeah.
And so when you're doing those conversations, you are actually already establishing a relationship. Yep. And if they are your true ideal target audience, then, bam, what you're creating is actually for them. And they can pay for that through the business model that you are creating, because you've tested that in conversations. Awesome. That's something that's applicable to them. And so once you figure out your unique value proposition, so why you can create a very simple pitch, which is really just an invitation, because you already have certain rapport with them, and you just go back to that same group of people. Right. And you say like, hey, remember how we were talking 2 months ago about my XYZ product or service? And you were explaining how you have this struggle and you want this, and so I came up with this solution that kind of fits that, and it takes you over the bridge or through the tunnel. And, I think I do have a good business model attached to it. So, pricing model, maybe a subscription or this or that could fit you. And I'm okay with this as well. And I was wondering if I can invite you, to join me in this. And maybe you can say, well, you know what, since you are my beta client, I'll even make it more interesting, and let's do half off, or, like I'll give you X amount of anything extra free or something, So
added value. No, that makes a ton of sense. And I think it segues nice into, the next part of the questions, where we talk about that preparation for growth and scaling, laying down those foundations through processes, KPIs, and those benchmarks. And I'm a big analytics person. I love the forecasting. I love to look at what's happening here on the main metrics. And then, when I do look back historically, then, hopefully there's no surprises, but it also gives you that ability to sort of pivot in between. But tell me in your words that, if we're preparing for growth and scale, how do we lay down those foundations or processes or KPIs, and what's important around those?
Okay. So I usually do this like a workshop with my big clients. And we do this in corporate wide, because I want everybody in the business to be included, every employee, because I want them to understand the power of processes and how processes are your best friend if you are a lazy person. Because they simplify your life, they make it easier, they make it more efficient. So first, you just unload the process the way you're doing it right now. Or, you find online how certain people do a certain process, and you start that way, and then you polish it up over time. Hence, always beta. And then, so first is you create a process. Then you figure out what you can measure, which steps in that process you can measure. And then from those numbers, you create calculations, and those are key performance indicators. So they are showing you how you are performing. And then, that doesn't give you the whole picture, because, maybe I do, 5% conversion on something, but maybe all my competitors are doing 15. So 5 is not bad, but it's away from the average. And then I know that there is huge opportunity for me to improve. So I know that I must invest myself, my time, my energy, or my money, or whatever, into that particular process or that particular step to get it at least at average, and then push it even beyond average.
That's brilliant.
So it's really just processes, KPIs, and then benchmarking gives you the full story so that you can understand. And then, you can even make graphs on time time ladder, so that you see how you're progressing through time.
Yeah, it's like a trend analysis, isn't it, that goes through that period. Awesome.
And you can also benchmark against future results that you want to achieve, and so on. So there's a lot of ways how you can do that. And then, of course, a product manager needs to look at different KPIs. CMO would look at different ones. CEO, again, at different ones on a bigger scale, on a more 50,000 feet view, and so on. So, then I help them with, which KPIs are appropriate for which level, and what to look for and how to evaluate them, and so on. So, you want KPIs that tell you what you need to know.
That's it. No, you don't want that paralysis by analysis situation. But I think what I sort of like about that is, and I don't know if you see this, maybe not in the bigger businesses, but certainly in that sort of, high growth early stage. I see a lot where I've got the dashboard up, and I've got the analytics, and I've got the KPIs, but they've missed the process part. And I see it often, and it's like, well, I know we're looking at this, but where does that come from? What says that's the right number? Is that a need to have number, a want to have number, a nice to have number? Is it even relevant? So I think that part of the process is
Mike, even, at one point when you're growing, you need to create some sort of corporate structure. While you have 3 employees, you don't necessarily have to have one, but when you are at 20 and plus, you really need one. And the way I create corporate structures is outside of processes, because I look how the process flows, and I think the best way is to then mold the corporate structure to fit that process flow, because then the whole thing flows easily. Not create a structure and then try to put processes on top, but take processes and then put structure that fits those processes. So that's my way of doing it. I mean, there are plenty of different ways how to do it. I just prefer it that way. It kind of makes the most sense for me, to be honest.
Yeah, and I love that, and I think that for the guys listening and the girls listening on the show today, you've got to work what works for you. When we interview people like Miha, the journeys, the stories, the experiences, there's so many learning lessons in there. The framework around the questioning that we do with the influencers, it's there to sort of highlight what we have either worked for us or in our niche. It may be slightly different for you. So nobody's saying we're right, wrong, or indifferent, but just take the principle and then apply it and work it. And that's what I love about that last point that Miha's just made about get the process right and then mold the structure around it. Love that. To a degree, I think, do I do that in some degrees? Yes. Do I do it hard enough? Probably not. So a learning curve for me there, but makes all the sense in the world. So it's slightly different but similar in the fact that if you're looking at writing a sales process, you can write your sales process down, whatever it would be, but the real baseline process is the buyer's journey, and then you write your sales process around the buyer, which is the reverse mentality or methodology that a lot of people think, hey, no, I'm going to write my sales process. No, stop, write your buyer's journey first. And I think that's how I see that in my world, Miha. So thanks for sharing that.
I mean, I always start with the end in mind, and then I reverse engineer it to today. Because if I don't know what's my goal, how can I create processes? How can I create steps if I'm not sure what I'm going towards? So,
no, I appreciate that, and it does make a lot of sense. And start with the ending, and then you know where you're at, but start here, and then there's some certains on that track, and then you fill in the blanks and work it and problem solve. So that's awesome. So as we wrap out on the questions, Miha, it's been amazing, Valley. I've so much enjoyed not only the stories and the extra information, but the knowledge. I mean, my show book's full of notes here. Tell me about this secret to having both the freedom, the time, the money, and why do entrepreneurs think that that's just not possible?
Well, most entrepreneurs, I think, like the money freedom is the easiest one to get. I mean, I know it might sound crazy to people who are just starting out and are still struggling with the cash flow, but the money freedom is really the easiest. Like it's easy to go to 6-7 figures, and with that you are already kind of free. I mean, unless your dream is to have crazy jets and stuff like that. So the money freedom is easy, but then the time freedom is like you have to learn how to let go. I guess it's like you're a mom and you have this 18-year-old son, and now suddenly it's time for you to let that son go into the wild world out there, and all you can is trust that you've built enough foundation, enough framework into that guy so that he will do good, but you need to let go and let him live his life, and that's the same in the company. And because entrepreneurs focus so much on, so one thing, they take major processes and do them themselves. So usually they do the sales, they do like all the major things that are generating revenue, they do them. And then they say, I can't find a person. I say, you're thinking wrong. It's your process is not good because you can't duplicate it. So let's see how we can make that process duplicatable, and then we can apply it to multiple people. So let's do it that way. And so that just the letting go, that transformation that they have to go through, but it's really the freedom of time and money combined that gives you the freedom of choice, which in my opinion is the ultimate freedom to do whatever you want to do. And when I talk with entrepreneurs, often they say, well, but I love working in my company. I said, okay, I understand, but tell me, if you love ice cream and all you can eat for the next 5 years, every day for all meals is just ice cream, will you still love it? Honestly, 5 years from now, probably not. So I'm not saying don't work there. I'm saying create the company almost like a McDonald's restaurant where you can fire yourself like tomorrow, or you can say tomorrow, you know what, guys, in 1 month, I'm going sailing for 6 months with my family. But I already have a system in place how I can onboard and teach and then have checks and balances in place so that I can, check if my CEO is doing a good job, and I can have somebody in my shoes in 1 month. I mean, of course, if you're dealing with an IT company, that it can't really be McDonald's style, because you can't really find those programmers on the streets. But I'm always trying to get them as close as possible.
It's about succession planning, isn't it? And I've got a policy. I don't know, and I'd love your view on it. And if you agree or disagree, it's absolutely fine. But my policy is I never get involved with a business if I don't know where I'm going to exit it. I know where I'm going to exit it up front before I sort of get involved. Or it might be I just start and then have a feel around and think, right, I now know where they exit. And people say, hey, Mike, is that a lack of commitment? No, it's not a lack of commitment. It to me, it's the right way, because I can systemize processes. Back in 2003, when we started to franchise our businesses, we eventually scaled to 68 franchises. And, it was hard work doing that, but it just then, the first dozen were, to be fair, were a bit of a car crash, if I'm being honest with you. We didn't get it right. And then you go back and, you learn and, you apply. The second 20 or 30 were okay. And then the top last ones were great because you'd polished that perfection, you'd learned from those mistakes and gone forward. So systemizing and processing is amazing. And as far as the exiting, it's personal choice. I'm not a big legacy business person.
But Mike, if you ask an entrepreneur, whoever tells you that, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, if you ask them, what do you want? They will all, or at least 9 out of 10 of entrepreneurs will tell you, we want freedom.
Yep.
And then they go and they have the money, but then they think, if I want the money, I have to work. And if I want more time, I will have less money. And because, I don't know, I love my family, I will just keep on working. And that's the sacrifice that I'm making, which it really doesn't have to be that way. But the thing is, if you want freedom, and then you are all for hustle, grind, 24/7, I mean, what kind of freedom is that? I mean,
prisoner, aren't you? You're a prisoner.
Yeah. And when I talk with entrepreneurs, how many times they tell me, I feel like I'm trapped by my own creation. I feel like the company owns me instead of me owning the company. And that's where I help them, first do the mindset shift. The whole transformation always starts and ends here in us as the entrepreneur. And then we do a plan, because, you have to do that in a good way. If you do it too fast, things can go wrong. So you need to give it enough time to do the whole transformation into a new leadership. And then, of course, there are ways how you can have checks and balances into place, but those checks and balances take you, I don't know, half an hour a week. But you can do that from an iPad from Bali or from wherever you are. You can do that by quickly logging and checking the right things and matching the right things together.
That's amazing. Miha, thank you so much. The value, and not just the value, but the detail and the depth that you've gone into is absolutely immense. So I can't thank you enough. And my show book's full of notes. I've learned so much again. So thank you for the lesson. I hope the listeners have had a tremendous amount of value on it. Again, you can connect with Miha. Just check out fail.coach. You're going to get a whole host of videos. Don't forget to sign up for Miha's Facebook bot. On there to get notified of when it goes live as well. Please reach out, connect. All the influences that you have on the show, they're more than happy to sort of give. And Miha, more than most, is there, like I say, doesn't really expect anything in return. He's there to help and guide and move you forward in life. So I appreciate, again, you sharing the experience, Miha. I'm humbled to have learned from you today. So as we start to wrap up, because we've covered so much, and those listening on the app and online, that maybe have not had a chance to write down all the stuff I've done, if you were to try and summarize this up, I know it's an injustice to try and summarize your knowledge into 3 quick things, but what would they be?
Well, I mean, it's really not that hard. For me, it's stay humble.
Yep.
Be grateful. So grateful for what you have and not just constantly go for the things you don't yet have. And then fail fast and fail forward.
Fail fast and fail forward. That's a great one. Thank you for that.
I mean, you know the saying, to walk, you first need to crawl.
Yeah.
And to succeed, you need to learn how to fail. Because, you mentioned that at the beginning that you don't know if there's any, like, I can guarantee that there's no single successful person, not just entrepreneur, but successful person who created something who didn't went through a lot of trial, a lot of error, a lot of failures, if you want to call them that way, but they never gave up. They were constantly failing fast, failing forward. The faster you fail, the sooner you will find what works.
That's great. And it's a little bit like another saying that I use, occasionally, and that is that, do you fail? Well, you either win or you learn. And, I think that's that fail fast, fail forward mentality. So that's amazing. Thanks ever so much, Miha. Again, you can check out Miha. We'll put all the show links in the notebooks and on the app to LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Go search the hashtags Framework for Freedom and Fail Coach. And don't forget to head over to and check out Miha's website at fail.coach. So thanks for being on the show. It's an immense amount of value. I know how important time is. Thanks so much again, Miha. We sincerely appreciate you being on the show.
Mike, it was an absolute pleasure. And I'm really, really grateful that you invited me, that, you let me share all of that and the story, and hopefully will inspire somebody of your listeners. So thank you so much for having me as a guest, and it was an absolute pleasure from my end.
Thank you very much indeed, Miha. And as always, guys, we appreciate you tuning in and giving up your valuable time to listen to the show. We appreciate you continuing your growth engine development. As always, get in the game, go do the hustle, go make it happen, and we're going to catch up with you on an open mic podcast real soon.
You have been listening to The Open Mic, brought to you by The Success Hub. To find out more and to get the resources we have mentioned in this podcast episode, simply visit blog.thesuccesshub.io and view the podcast section. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to catching up with you in our next episode. This podcast and associated materials is published under copyright to The Success Hub. All rights reserved. No reproduction of this material is permitted.